Hi guys, Mr. Apollos here. Today we're going to be going over our second essential question for our periodic table unit. If you remember in the first one we were talking about where the periodic table came from and how it was created. We talked about all its different parts and how it could be broken into different sections. But today we're going to be looking at something a little bit more specific, and that is the families or groups that are found on the periodic table. Now just as a reminder, a group or family on a table is also known as a column. Now from your notes, you'll remember that there were 18 total columns on the periodic table, but that doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to be going through every single one of them and talking about the different families. We're actually going to break this down into only 6 different groups or families that you will need to know. So if you are taking your notes at home, make sure that you have a new sheet of paper. If you're in class, you might want to get those notes out so you can add to them. And we are just going to continue our periodic table unit. Here is a very short list of our 5 key words. We have alkali metals, reactivity, alkali earth metals, halogens, and noble gases. So as you see these terms, try and remember that these are the ones that you're going to want to highlight or box or underline or do something to make stand out in your notes. And I'll try and remind you of that as we go too. Now, from our essential question, we have all these different smaller questions that we're going to focus on. And these are going to mostly pertain to the groups or families that we're going to be studying. So the very first question that we're going to be answering today is what are the group 1 elements? So if you remember, this is written on the left-hand skinny column of your Cornell notes, and the answers are going to be what follows this. So our group 1 elements actually have a very specific name, and those are called the alkali earth metals. And that is something that I would encourage you guys to box or underline or highlight, alkali metals. And they're simply defined as group 1 or column 1, for those of you that need that reminder. Column 1 element. So pretty much every element found in that first column on the periodic table is going to be part of the alkali metal group or alkali metal family. Now, they have some very specific characteristics that we want you guys to know. The first being that they are silvery solids, so they do all have a silvery color. And if you remember, this is the one where we cut a piece of sodium and dropped it in water back in the early parts of school, and hopefully you'll get a chance to do that in class today. So these are silvery solids, and if you remember, I showed you that last time we did this. They are very, very soft, actually, too. Most of them are soft like butter. Okay, and they are also known to have very low melting points and density, so which means they float a lot. Okay, we'll be doing some review on densities in the upcoming weeks, but alkali metals, group 1, silvery, soft solids with very low melting points and densities. Those are some characteristics that you will want to remember. Now, the other characteristic that we don't have on here, but that you guys surely will recall, is that they also react violently with water. React with water, or H2O. They react very violently, so you might want to remember that. It may help you remember who these guys are. Now, the second thing that I want you guys to know is that reactivity increases as you go down the column. Now, we haven't talked a whole lot about reactivity, so I've also come in here and written down a definition for you for reactivity. And that's just basically its ability to combine or mix with other things in its environment or in the world. So for these, the reactivity goes up. So that means that our weakest element, or our weakest reactivity, is at the top, and the strongest reactors are at the bottom. Now, in just a second, I'm going to show you a picture of what these elements are, but you should be able to identify them, because we did drop a few of them in water in class. So here is the full family. It starts up here at lithium, number 3, and then it goes all the way down here to francium, number 87. Now, if you remember what we said on that last slide, is that this is the weakest reactant. Weakest reactant. Okay? Whereas this one is the strongest. And that's typically the trend in this periodic table. It increases. Now, if you guys were in class when we did this, which you guys may even be doing it today, there is a sodium atom right here in the middle. That's the one that we dropped in water, and we saw that it blew up, and even in one of my classes actually shattered a glass bowl. Imagine how much stronger these francium ones are down towards the bottom. These are actually used to make some bombs, francium bombs. Okay, so they're extremely violent. Now, I do want to draw your attention before we progress that this does not include hydrogen. Hydrogen is not part of the alkali family. Hydrogen is unique in that it doesn't really belong to a family. But I want to draw your attention to those. So alkali metals, column 1, they are soft silvery solids with low densities and low melting points. And the weakest reacting is lithium, and it increases until you get to francium. Now there's a video built into the Google slide deck here, but you're actually going to watch that after this to show you some questions and information on the alkali group from this really good group of people on YouTube called Brainiacs. And they make some really interesting videos and they blow a lot of stuff up, so you'll enjoy that. So our first question was, what are the group 1 elements? Our second question is going to move right on to the next group, which is our group 2 elements. Now these are not as exciting as the group 1, but hopefully today you'll see a demonstration with magnesium that shows you that they do have some interesting qualities. We call these the alkali earth metals. And again, this is something that you guys are going to want to highlight or underline. Alkali earth metals. Alkaline earth metals. Make sure that you don't confuse the two. Alkali comes first. Now remember, because it's a shorter word, so it's first. And then a longer word comes second, alkaline earth metals. Those are found in group 2. Now, they are very, very similar to the alkaline metals in all aspects, but they have a little bit higher density. They're not quite as soft, and if you've ever, if your teacher shows you the magnesium in class, you'll see that. They also tend to have higher melting points, so it takes a lot more energy to get them to do anything. Now, the magnesium that we're going to burn in class, we're actually going to light it on fire, and it doesn't melt. It actually does burn and react with oxygen. It makes an extremely bright light. Okay. Now, their reactivity is, they're not quite as reactive as the alkali group, and you'll be able to see that. We drop sodium in water, and it blows up. We light magnesium on fire, and it burns and makes a bright light. So not quite as reactive, but they are still not found alone. So they're reactive enough to mix with other substances. So again, group 2 elements are alkaline earth metals. They are very similar to alkaline metals, but they are just a step above, so denser, harder, higher melting points, and they are not as reactive. Okay. Now on this one, the reactivity does still increase as you go down, but not quite as dramatically as we saw in that group 1 elements. Here are our group 2 alkaline earth metals. So beryllium is right here at top, starting it off, and it goes down. The magnesium is the one that we're going to burn in class, and it goes all the way down here to radium, which is found at the bottom. Now this image over here, it shows you what for those of you that are at home, what magnesium looks like when you light it on fire. And it literally makes an extremely bright light. It's actually one of the key ingredients in making sparklers. Now for today's class, that is where we're actually going to stop these notes. So just as a quick review, so you guys can remember, we talked about 2 groups today. The first one is column 1, which are the alkali group. Now we saw those, and probably the most memorable thing is that they are explosive in water. Okay, and that they are more reactive at the bottom of the table. Okay, those are 2 big key facts that we'll want you to remember. The second group came from column 2, and they are called the alkaline earth. And they are very similar to our first group. The only difference is they are not quite as reactive. They're not quite anything as much as the alkali, so they're not quite as hard, they're not quite as dense, they're not quite as reactive as the first ones. Now we're going to stop here so that you guys hopefully have the chance to go out and look at some of these elements in action and some of these groups in action. Just remember that you can come back and watch this video as many times as you want to make sure that you get it. And if you're doing this on Edpuzzle, make sure that you rewatch it to get the questions correct. Or if you really mess up, email Mr. Apollos or your teacher, and they can reset your grade so you can do it again. Have a great day, guys, and I can't wait to see you soon.